One complaint I see about games every now and again is that the player count on the side of the box does not accurately represent how many people you should really have at the table in order to play that game, or how the gameplay experience will differ based upon that player count. Acquire, for example, is listed as a 3 to 6 player game, but had someone in a game group a long time ago in a 6-player game who was the 6th player, had the worst experience possible, and I would never want to subject someone else to that unless everyone already knew the game really well, knew what they were getting into, and could account for that, possibly, in how they would play. I learned arcs at BGG Spring 2024 in a 4-player game where one person was familiar, the other 3 were new. Did not seem like the ideal experience. Had very little control, I felt, over what I was doing, what was scoring, what was going on in general. 2 people were very slow, so it took a while. Did not seem great, but that was possibly not the ideal experience. Maybe I should say, learn arcs with 2 players, just so you'll have more control over it. You can't really represent that well on the side of the box. Richard Garfield's King of Tokyo is another example of this. The game is listed for 2 to 6 players, but a 2-player game of King of Tokyo really loses the important aspect of the kingness of it, because King of Tokyo is effectively a King of the Hill game where one monster climbs into Tokyo, or 2 monsters in a 5 or 6-player game, and they get to attack everyone else. So their damage is multiplied effectively across the whole table, but everyone else is also attacking the person in the middle. So you want to be king so you can score points and so you can damage everyone, and then you retreat at the right time, maybe recover a bit, and then try to storm back in. So King of the Hill really comes through in the gameplay of King of Tokyo, but with 2 people, you lose that entirely because it's just one person attacking another. It almost doesn't matter if you're in Tokyo. Now you're scoring points, but you lose that advantage of attacking everyone. You just have the drawback of not being able to heal. Doesn't feel quite right. But designer Richard Garfield and publisher Yellow are now releasing King of Tokyo Duel, a 2-player only version of King of Tokyo that keeps much of the King of Tokyo flavor, the gameplay, the destruction of your opponent, because one way to win is to knock their health down to 0, as in the original game. You still want to do that, but the King of the Hill aspect has been replaced by a tug-of-war aspect, which makes perfect sense for a 2-player game. One player versus another, pulling for victory with tokens on the board. Let me show you how it works. Here are the components of King of Tokyo Duel set up and ready for play. Each player takes one of the 6 monsters included in the box, and you set your health dial to the starting health value of your monster. It's 12 to 15, not just 20 like in the original game. And if you get your opponent down to 0, you win. Okay, that's very familiar, as is the basic gameplay. You have dice. You're going to roll these 6 dice up to 3 times. You save what you want to save. You can decide to change your mind and roll something again. After 3 rolls, you must stop, although you can stop earlier if you wish. And 3 of the sides of the dice are the same as in the original King of Tokyo. You have a claw. For each claw you roll, you do 1 point of damage to your opponent. For each heart you roll, you would regain a health point, but you can't go higher than your maximum. For each energy bolt you roll, you get an energy cube and add it to your board. The second player starts with 1 energy cube, which is an important element, and you'll see other changes to energy in this game. Now, what's different for King of Tokyo Duel? You have a game board that has 2 tracks on it. You have a destruction track and a fame track. And normally these tokens stand up, but I think they're easier to see in the video if I lie them down. The fame and destruction tracks work similar to the 1s, 2s, and 3s in the original King of Tokyo. If you get 3 of a kind of the destruction marker, you are going to pull the destruction token 1 space toward you. And for each additional destruction, you would draw it 1 more space. So just like the 1s, 2s, and 3s. You need a triple to score initially, and then each extra 1 gets you farther. If you get a star, works the same way. You need 3 stars. And now you can pull this 1 space toward you. Additional star does the same. The exclamation mark, however, Well, what it does depends upon which monster you are. So you have different powers baked into the monsters themselves rather than using the evolution cards. For example, if you're a Gigazor and you roll 2 exclamation marks, you can move one of these tokens 1 space toward you. And if you had a pair, you could move each one 1, or you can move another one 2. Okay. So that's what Gigazor does. Very straightforward. The Alienoid, where you get 2 exclamation marks and it counts as a symbol of your choice. So if I rolled this, I now have 3 destruction markers and can move this 1 space toward me. This would count for an additional 1. This last one, I can't do anything with. You have to use these as they are shown. If I have 2, I can do this. If I have 1, I do this. If I have another 2, I can do it again. So if I had 5 exclamation marks and this, I can say this is destruction, this is destruction. I now have 3 of a kind, and this is a 4th one. I get to move it 2 spaces. Okay. That's Alienoid power, Gigazor power. Fairly straightforward. They are labeled difficulty 1 in the game. You have power cards, as in the original game. They're specifically designed for this game. Many of them relate to the fame track, the destruction track, or having only 1 opponent, or these tokens on the side here. These are called buzz tokens, and when you purchase a power card that has an icon on it, then you place that buzz token on the track, or if it's already on the track and it's not covered by a marker, you can move it to a new location. This power card on the right-hand side has a 1 energy discount. When something is bought, things slide over. So this can be discounted, slide over. Now this one's discounted, you flip a new card. Okay. So the discount gives you an incentive to buy, an incentive to keep churning things through. You can spend as much energy as you want in order to buy as many cards as you want. So if we had it like this cost only 1. This slides over, this is now 5. So if you had 6 energy, you could buy both of them. If you want, you can spend 2 energy, you throw away these 3 cards, turn up new cards. Okay, so that's familiar. Some of the cards seem familiar as well. All right, you have keepers that you hold in front of you, cards you discard after using them once. You roll an additional die each turn. That seems familiar, yes. That's from the original game, if I remember correctly. But you have other ones like this where you gain 1 die token each time you pull the destruction or fame marker off a buzz token. There's lots going on there. So the buzz token, when you get it, you add it to the board on this track. So I might put this here. I can put it here. I can put it on the opponent's side. You can do what you wish. You just can't put it on top of another buzz token or where the token already is. When you move this, if I pull this toward me and I land on the claw, then I do a damage to the opponent. If I move on here, I get a die token. At the start of my turn, I can hand in a die token to roll an extra die that turn. You can have at most 2 of these tokens in front of you. Now, if I keep moving it and the opponent moves it back, now they get the die token, they get the claw. So, mixed bag here, whether that's good or bad, depending on what you're trying to do sometimes. But others just provide a more direct effect. If you have this token, you reduce the length of the track by 1 space. So 1, 2. So I skip over 1. There's other ones as well that lengthen the track, so I can make it longer for you. And the cards often interact with the buzz tokens. So you're adding more powers in the game. I keep them face down so I can recognize the icons more clearly, because once you turn it over, it's much smaller. So you can add different things onto the track. So in addition to the card, you often get a token, or you get to move a token, which is going to change what's available, and more things will happen. You will combo things a bit together with these buzz tokens, especially if you get this, gain a die token after you pull this off a buzz token. Well, it works for the one that you just put on, because it would have been this one, but it works with all the other ones as well. So this one goes on, which now I can't see because I flipped them over. I already put it on there. I think. Nope, that's that one. Okay. This is my one complaint about this game. I find these icons too small. That is that one. This is that one, which is why I keep them turned face down. Often when a new card comes out, I put the token on it so that both of us know what token is available. I flip it over so we see the powers available. But once they're on the board, you can't do that. Okay. Here, you pull one fame for each of your dice, for each claw resolve this turn. Again, small icons. Okay. What else do we have here? What other things do we have available? Now, one element that's different in King of Tokyo Duel is that you roll your dice, you resolve your dice. That's all familiar. You're moving on the track. That's new, but still familiar. Then you can buy cards, but if you do not buy a card, you get an energy from the bank. So the rules now are pumping more energy into the game. They're making it possible for you to buy more cards, which is a cool thing to do, both to put the buzz tokens on the track and to use the powers of the card. So cards are sometimes avoided or not really an element in King of Tokyo as much as you might want them to be, just because you have to really focus on getting energy in order to do that. But in King of Tokyo Duel, you got more energy pumped into the game. So just like the second player starts with one, if you don't buy a card, you get one. So you can build up for the future. And in addition, many cards often give you an instant buyback in a sense. So this one costs 10, which seems ridiculous, but you immediately get 8 energy and you get 2 dice tokens. So what's the point? Why not make it 2? Well, because 2 energy is way too cheap to get 2 dice tokens. You have to go through the work of getting 10 energy, or 9 in this case, because now it's discounted. You do it, you get almost all of that energy back immediately. So it's a bit of effort to climb that hill in the first place, but then you have most of the energy to keep doing more things. You have something like this. When you buy this card, you gain 4 energy, so it's free, and 4 hearts. It's all upside, except, let's see, you roll once each additional turn, and 1 additional die each turn, and if you end up with a 4 of a kind, you take 10 damage. So it's all upside initially by giving you a heart, by letting you roll a die, but don't get a 4 of a kind. How do you like to gamble? There you go. You got lots of possibilities in the cards here. It's fun stuff. And as I mentioned, many more of them seem to come into play. And these they have a real presence in the game because they affect what happens. Okay. What else is important about these tracks? Well, they give you the other winning conditions. So you win if you knock out your opponent. You also win if you take one of these tokens and bring it all the way to the edge of the board. If you pull it all the way to there, you are acknowledged as the most famous monster in the world, or wherever you happen to be. Tokyo, I guess. And everyone bows down to you. Or you're the most destructive monster and no one can compete with you. The third way to win is to get both of these tokens in the spotlight zone, this area of 3 spaces here on your side of the track. So if you do that, then you win. If you do this, you do not win because both of the tokens are not in the spotlight track. But if the opponent would pull this back, then you would win. So they have to work on this one first and then pull this after. So this is the tug of war element, specifically 2-player, that really drives a lot of the gameplay, because now instead of trying to get points or kill an opponent, you're killing the opponent or working toward pulling this, where you use the symbols instead of the numbers for points. It's much more convoluted, I would say, but in a good way. You're not just getting points, which is very straightforward. I roll numbers, I add the numbers to my board, and that's that. No, you have tokens moving along the track that are going to interact with these things, and often cards will give different effects. So in this case, if a destruction marker or a destruction token or fame token is in a spotlight zone when you buy this, then the monster who's sighted on takes 4 damage. So someone can be pushing along, almost about to win, and then suddenly you punch him for 4, which may be all you need. Good stuff here. All right. What do the other monsters do? They're important because right now you're barely going to see these extra die tokens and these extra dice because the monsters don't give them to you. You only get them from the cards. So what do we have here? We got Space Penguin, got the Mecha Dragon. These are difficulty 2 in the rules. The Space Penguin, roll an exclamation mark, you get a die token. Roll a second one, you get a die token. Roll a third one, you get nothing because you can have at most 2 of these. So now next turn I can hand these 2 in and roll 8 dice. Give you lots of firepower here. So it's a delayed effect. You get nothing now, but you can do lots later. Mecha Dragon, you can treat your claws as if they are claws times the number of exclamation marks you have. So if I roll this, instead of having 1 damage, I do 4 damage. If I had no exclamation marks, I don't have to multiply it. I still do 1 damage. But this means this is now 8 damage. With your normal 6 dice, you can do 9 damage at a time, which I did in 1 game, and it felt awesome. So there you go. The Mecha Dragon, it gives you a definite direction of how to go. Roll the dice. Maybe you have cards that let you manipulate dice. Maybe you can win tokens that give you more dice in order to combo that all together, and you can do a ton of damage all at once. All right. This is straightforward. Pull on the track. This, well, depends on what you're trying to do. Get energy to buy things, attack, heal, move. You've got choices, and it lets you work with the exclamation marks to affect whatever your choices are. Space Penguin, it gets you more dice, which may seem kind of weird to hold off now and then move on later, but it depends upon how effectively you use those dice. I'm going to give a time marker here. You can skip ahead if you don't want to learn this trick. 1 secret trick that you should not do. So I played 1 player using the Space Penguin, and on their first roll, they would almost always set aside 2 dice with exclamation marks so that they could get the die tokens. But that doesn't do anything because you spent the 2 tokens in the first place to get the dice, and now you're spending the dice to get 2 more tokens. There's no benefit to doing that. That's nothing. So you don't want to do that. I played someone else with the Space Penguin, and they caught on about a third of the way through the game and realized, oh, don't do that. Instead, what else are you trying to do? Am I just trying to claw you repeatedly and just roll and do huge attacks all at once? Or am I trying to get 6 stars here and then I can move this 4 spaces all at once? So the extra dice let you do something other than just get dice, but if at the end of your rolls you happen to have exclamation marks left over, well then, as a bonus, you get the die tokens. It's not something to shoot for initially, it's to make them not useless, which often happens because at the end of a roll, maybe you're going to end up with something like this, and now this is useless. You can't do anything with it. If you have just 1 of these, normally it's useless for most of these monsters. But here it gets you a die. All right, good stuff. So the final 2, level 3 difficulty. You have the King. If you roll 2 exclamation marks, you get to take 1 of your special King Buzz tokens and put it on the board. Let's assume the opponent is going this way. King sitting over here. When an opponent pulls a token onto the King's marker, it must stop moving. So even if the opponent would move it 2 spaces, it stops after 1. Okay, you slow them down. You have 2 of these tokens to work with. If you had something like this already where you're trying to, get things in the spotlight, now I'm going to stop it. So you have to stop there. And then I can do it, maybe you pull this on. move this over here, you have to stop again. Whatever the case is, in order to slow the person down, you can do something like this. You stop, you stop. I also don't let you put buzz tokens on the track to help you rush toward the end or give you special powers. I'm blocking your way there by using those. And I get to move them whenever I have 2 exclamation marks, as long as a token is not already on the board, already on top of it. Cyber Kitty. All right. You get 2 exclamation marks and you get 2 energy. Which, okay, that's fine. That's effectively just like rolling 2 bolts. But of course, this is only 1 energy. You need 2 exclamation marks to get 2 energy. Get another exclamation mark, and that's another 2 energy. And now you need another pair of exclamation marks before you can get 2 energy again. So it works the same as the other ones. Do the first line, you can do the second line, and then you sort of restart it in order to do it again. So it gets you a bit more energy than you normally would. If you have something like this, this is now 4 energy instead of 3 with the normal energy bolts. You're rolling extra dice, you're going to get even more. You're going to spend a lot more time focusing on cards and trying to put something together. But of course, you have to actually buy the cards that are useful or spend energy to flush them and try to find something. Ideally for the situation. You can find something to block someone. You can find someone to cause damage because they moved a token into the spotlight zone. You can find some hearts when you desperately need them. You can find an attack. That's the whole goal with Cyber Kitty. But you have to be focused and be aware and have shifting goals depending upon what's going on in the game. So it's a cool power. You can put a lot of stuff together and definitely put even more cards into play thanks to you getting an energy when you don't buy a card on the turn. And you can build up towards huge turns sometimes. So it's good stuff, but inevitably you'll probably be distracted by something that seems really cool and then it doesn't pay off. There's a card in here, just like in the original King of Tokyo, where if you get all 6 different symbols, then it gives you a great effect. And I have chased that so many times in so many King of Tokyo games, and now I've chased it in this game as well, because you want that cool effect. It's that lottery hit. Everything comes in perfectly. I get so distracted by it. Haven't yet learned my lesson. I played King of Tokyo Duel 8 times in a review copy from Yellow, and I think it succeeds as both a product and a game. Now, what I mean by that is this is, of course, a product with Yellow trying to extend its King of Tokyo line that started in 2011 so that people who are already aware of the game will have something else new that they might want to pick up. Maybe they play often with 2 players and King of Tokyo didn't quite fit, so now you got something to fill that gap. And players will find what they expect to find in this game, with monsters beating each other up and you rolling dice and pressing your luck and trying to get the right combo at the right time and small modifications with power cards. So it has all the stuff that they will expect to see. But as a standalone game for people who are not familiar with King of Tokyo, I think it works perfectly wonderfully as well, primarily because you're going to look at this cover, monsters beating one another up, the town being destroyed, and that's what you're doing in the game, trying to get your opponent down to 0 life or becoming super famous by wrecking things. You become super famous and you try to wreck things. Maybe both together to get that spotlight win, or maybe you just concentrate on one thing. And everything feels very interwoven in this design, where you have more energy coming into play compared to King of Tokyo. I'm trying to think of this as a standalone game, and yet inevitably there are comparisons to the original design. You've got energy flowing into the game so that plenty of cards come into play that bring buzz tokens on the track that add more elements, so you're not just doing one thing at a time. You're advancing the fame token and you're punching your opponent, or getting a new die, or recovering a life point. So these things add together, or you're advancing the token and because of a card you have, you get to hit the opponent, or you're hitting the opponent and you get to advance the token at the same time. So there's just a few elements, but the cards tie them all together, and cards enter the game frequently because lots of energy flows into play, more than in the original King of Tokyo. So there's more variety and more interconnection between different actions. So it gives you a lot to think about. Yeah, even with this small design of relatively simple format where you're just rolling dice up to 3 times. And people take different approaches to what they're trying to do as they're rolling dice. Sometimes someone just adopts a policy or an approach and they just stick with that. I just want to beat people up. I just want to get to the end of the track. That's all I'm trying to do. And you can roll and try to make that happen. But of course, you can also adapt depending upon what comes up and what cards are available and what your opponent is trying to do. And of course, it depends upon which monster you are, because of course, monsters specialize in different things with attack or movement or buying cards or a little of both, depending upon which powers you actually have. So not everything is perfect with the design. I already mentioned these small buzz tokens, or at least small for my eyes, where I have a hard time seeing the tokens, so I have to leave them this way, and they're still relatively small. They're trying to make distinct silhouettes, and I suppose it works, but again, I find it a bit small. But I also find the card text a bit small. So a new card comes over, it's going to have 4 or 5 lines on here. I need to pick this thing up to read it. I can't just glance and figure out what it is. Perhaps with more play, I'll recognize the name and then be able to know what it does, but I'm not at that point yet. So slows down a little bit, but of course, when the opponent's rolling dice, I have time to look at this because I can't do anything while they're rolling dice. There's only one person rolling dice, so turns flow quickly compared with regular King of Tokyo sometimes, where you have one person go and another, and sometimes people are very thoughtful about what they want to keep and what they want to roll and what the odds are. And they're not just winging it. They're not just playing King of Tokyo as a party game as I feel it more is. So they put a lot of thought into it. But with this, you only have one other person rolling. And so you've got just a little bit of time and you can think about maybe what you want to do, or remember, I've got this card, I want to focus on this, how am I going to respond, what cards have come up and are available. So there's lots to consider. One other thing, maybe not ideal. So we got the monsters. This iconography down at the bottom can be confusing, as in I have had opponents who have been confused by the iconography. This, for example, CyberKitty has 2 exclamation marks and then a greater than sign and then 2 energy. What this means is if you get 2 exclamation marks, you can convert that into 2 energy. It equals 2 energy, or there should be an arrow to show if this, then that. But instead you have a greater than sign, which they did not know how to interpret. They were very confused. Even after I explained it, they would look at it again, they'd roll the dice, and they'd be like, so what do I have here? So it took a little experience. It's just small iconography things that slow down the game a bit. There's some cards that are not immediately clear as you're reading them. Some are extremely straightforward. Right? Pull 1 star. Okay, you know what to do there. Pull 2 destruction tokens or 2 fame tokens. And then this one with 4 lines of text. Okay, it's a bit more. Hibernation. I think I finally figured it out the 3rd time I've seen the card. It seems like you need this very specific situation where hibernation is going to be perfect. And if you're not in that situation as you're reading the card, you're kind of like, why would I ever want to do this? I don't think it makes any sense. But maybe I'll be in the right situation at one moment and read the card and be like, okay, that's what I need. Possibly because I understand it enough to know that I die often because I'm not trying to gain life. I'm not trying to recover my hearts. And so I put myself in the danger zone of someone just punching me out. Okay, it happens. It's not great. Now, what's interesting thinking about Duel is someone picking this up and going the other way. If they're not familiar with King of Tokyo, they get this first and then they go to King of Tokyo and they're like, this is way more straightforward and less interesting perhaps, because the monsters don't have powers. You don't have the tracks with all the buzz tokens and things interrelated there. You are just trying to get points by rolling numbers on the dice or possibly buying cards. But it's harder to buy cards because less energy comes into the game. So it's a bit more straightforward and randomish because you're just relying on what people are rolling rather than sort of adapting what you're rolling. There's some cards as well that if you don't use a die, you can transform it into energy. So that's cool. And that means you can just choose not to use certain dice and build up for the energy when you want it. So you've got more choices available depending upon which cards come up. So it feels like there's more to consider. Whereas again, King of Tokyo, more straightforward, more of a party game. You're going to play, you're going to roll, you're possibly going to lose. You go get snacks while other people are still playing, and you come back and you're cheering for one person or the other based upon who knocked you out of the game. So it works, but it's a different experience, a different feeling, just because there are more people at the table. And so it creates this different dynamic compared to King of Tokyo Duel. So it's similar, but different. This is a bit more just involved, a little bit more to think about and just puzzle things together as you're trying to get the right cards for the right situation, or keep things away from the opponent. So you now have only one person to consider. You can look at the power cards and be like, I know that's perfect for them. I'm going to spend 2 energy just to get rid of it. Don't want to give them a chance. Whereas in King of Tokyo, with more people at the table, you're probably not going to flush the cards just to remove one card that is good for one person, unless they are literally about to win the game. So you just let it go, and maybe someone else will do it, or they'll buy it instead, or whatever it is. Here, much more head-to-head, obviously, because it's only 2 people. So everything is designed for that focus and really lets you concentrate on what that other person is doing, ideally. Again, I've lost because I have not gotten hearts, but that's more because I'm trying to push on my end. I'm trying to go offensive instead of worrying about defense. I'm not trying to outlast other people as in King of Tokyo, but really just drive toward the end of the game and make that happen. Push my way to victory, or rather pull. Pull my way to victory. Pull those tokens toward me. I have to claim those tokens so I can show them off. There you go. A review of King of Tokyo Duel from Richard Garfield and Yellow.